Speaker. I want to join with the other speakers who have shared their condolences and expressed their concern with the people of Christchurch at this time. But otherwise, I've heard nothing consistent coming from the government during this debate. In fact, from the last speaker, the overwhelming message I just heard was the government doesn't have a plan. Can we hear the opposition's pleas? Perhaps they're willing to poach some of our ideas, and we've shared plenty of them, Mr Grosser. In particular, I do want to highlight the absolute denial of reality that has come from the government during the debate today. Not only from Minister Coleman, who stated that Labour was listening too much to the people of the Beltway and not talking to real New Zealanders, right through to Mr Grosser, who tried to claim that we were talking in anecdote. What is anecdotal or Beltway about 10% unemployment in Northland? What is Beltway about that? I asked the government. What about the individual cases we've heard, which are just simply a representative cut of the huge swathes of unemployed people in particular regions? We had the story of two young men in Northland who have been desperately seeking work, who have sought to upskill themselves but are still in the dole queue. Those are the people that will not be helped by welfare reforms, as the government claimed. Those are the people that are sitting waiting desperately for the government's plan, which is represented by interest rates, classic trickle-down. Now, can the government tell me how long will it take for those people to benefit from your trickle-down economics? How long will it take? Because at the moment, not just 10% in Northland, but 27% of young people are currently looking for work. 27%. What is anecdotal about that? What is Beltway about those figures? That government is completely out of touch. I listened carefully to Bill English in question time today when the opposition asked him about the cost of living. And he continued to use the government's classic rhetoric. The success of the tax switch, the sharp edges of the recession, and that somehow the government has protected the most vulnerable with its economic plan. I want to ask how that matches with the reality of the situation, because let's cut through the rhetoric. Let's cut through the supposed anecdote and look at the cold, hard facts. Some of the people who are most vulnerable in New Zealand are those without secure housing. It's something that our spokesperson on housing talks about at great length. A large number of people in New Zealand, and increasingly so young people in New Zealand, are dependent on rentals in order to put a roof over their head. And 32% have experienced, there has been a 32% increase in rentals since this government has been in charge. 32%. It averages out for the average person about $20 per week in Auckland, where there are a large number of families who are reliant on rental properties for their housing. That is not an anecdote, that is cold, hard fact. And what about the impact on those other vulnerable people who are on fixed incomes? I include in that not only the elderly, but also those people who, for instance, are trying to better themselves, particularly in a recession, by going back to university or going into skills and trade training. Well, those individuals in tertiary education have experienced a 16.5% increase in the cost of study. 16.5%. And that's before we even look at the increase in cost for those who are in our compulsory sector of education. And the government's response to that has been what? To make it more difficult to access loans in order to survive. And if you're 55 years or older, you can kiss goodbye your opportunity to even study at all. So what about those older people who are trying to retrain, who might have been in vulnerable job areas where manufacturing in particular is experiencing significant job losses because that government will do nothing about the high dollar, and as a result we're losing jobs? What about the older people in the manufacturing sector who may wish to retrain? What are the opportunities for those older people? And Labour has already said, we have laid out the challenge. The consensus over monetary policy is over. It is time to acknowledge that the high dollar is causing Kiwis to suffer. We are losing jobs because of the government's inaction on this question. And what about other fixed costs? Like power, 10% increase over the past year. And
Dr. Jackie Blue.